Hello everyone, this is going to be a very practical video on how to beneficially influence the weather. And I have been prompted to record this video by all that's been happening recently in terms of wildfires all across Europe, well, at least in certain part of Europe. Especially in Northern Europe and Greece, and what is still currently happening in terms of huge wildfires in California, very destructive wildfires. I have experience in that area of influencing the weather patterns for the better, and I want to share that experience. I want to give you a way to do the same. So I want to give you all a way to just on your own or by gathering with one friend or several like-minded friends to be in a position to end a drought, for instance, or to end violent winds, or to reduce or put an end to torrential rains, whatever extreme weather patterns are manifesting. So that is going to be the emphasis on that video. It is going to be how to practically bring a remedy to these conditions, to be the protector of your area, your part of the world, in that specific condition. So you can absolutely be a protector. We are meant to be guardians and stewards of the earth. And when I say we, I mean humanity as a whole, but more specifically those among us who are more conscious, more awake at this particular moment in time, because we have more responsibility than people who are still unaware of their true nature and their role on this planet and what they're able to do. The more aware of these things we are, the more of a responsibility we have to put that awareness and that knowledge into action. As a species, we have forgotten for a while that we were meant to be these stewards, these guardians, and these responsible co-managers. And I say co-managers because this planet is perfectly able to manage herself. But we are meant to co-manage it in full cooperation with her, in full aware organic cooperation with her. And there are very good reasons for that. I'm not going to enter these details right now. Well, they're not details, but I mean I'm not going to go into the specifics of that right now, because I want the focus to be on what can we do and how can we do it. So I'll give you the tools. I'll give you the tools, and you'll be able to put them into practice right away while this video is still running, because there will be a guided meditation a guided meditation that you can follow and enter into at the end of this video. So why and how is it that we can influence the weather? As I said, we are the stewards of this planet. At least we were meant to be, and we are still meant to be. We have forgotten that for a while, but we are in the process of remembering it more and more. and I'm very happy about that. I wish it would be quicker than it actually is, but timing issues are tricky, and I have to trust the perfection of the timing of this whole process. So why and how? We are in an organic relationship with our environment that is it's not just physical, that relationship. It is multidimensional in nature. And I'll keep repeating this very often. We are multidimensional beings living on another multidimensional being, planet Earth. So there is more, much more to us than just the physical manifestation of our being. And when I say just, it's a manner of speaking, because the physical manifestation is not insignificant. It is extremely significant. It matters a lot, and it's extraordinary, and it holds tremendous potential. But we are not limited to that particular expression of our being. We are much more, and we have many different aspects, and so has the Earth. And because we live in organic synergy with the Earth, in our multidimensionality, in our energetic connection with all that is this planetary environment, we are also organically linked to the weather patterns, and we are perfectly able to influence them in a beneficial way. I believe we already influence them to a large extent in a chaotic way. But I don't mean by that we are causing what is manifesting right now. So before we go into the practical, because that's what you might want to get right away, and you're welcome to fast forward this video. You're welcome to go. I'll indicate in the comment section, in the description, not the comment section. I'll indicate in the description when the meditation starts, so you can go right there if you wish to. But I wish to provide context first. I wish to give you a few examples of the way people are able to influence the weather, of the way I've been able in this life to influence the weather in very significant ways sometimes. When I say very significant, I mean on a very large scale and in a very visible way. I also want to give context about what is happening right now in the weather chaos that is manifesting itself right now. So you know that there is a lot of talk these days about global warming, even though they tend to get rid of that label global warming. I don't know whether you've noticed that, but instead of global warming, there is much more talk about climate change right now, which is really interesting, because it was all supposed to be about the temperatures rising and rising too fast. Well, if it's so, if it is such a catastrophe, if it is so dangerous, if it is that much of a problem, I'm sorry for the alarmed expression you could read on my face. It wasn't because of global warming or climate change. It was because my computer, my screen was getting dark, which is a pretty interesting synchronicity. But what I was saying was that if it is so big of a drama, why change the expression? Why change the semantics? Why go for the much more neutral, innocuous expression of change? Because, you know, that's the only constant in existence. It's change. It's the only thing that doesn't change. It's change. So if it's only climate change, what's the problem? And it's, to me, it sounds like a sort of okay, I'm trying to find the expression in English. I'm primarily French speaking, so fair warning. So to me, it looks like this has something to do with plausible deniability or something like that. But global warming. We are constantly being told that the temperature are rising too fast, and that is caused by human activity, mainly human industrial activity. And we are also constantly being told, mainly by the media and also by political actors, that, as Mr. Obama famously said, the science is settled and that there is a scientific consensus on the matter, with a few isolated dissident voices. Again, as I'm going to say many times in future videos, don't accept anything that you're being told at face value. Do your research. Do your research, especially when you're being told something by the mainstream media, because there's nothing like a free press. I'm sorry if you still believe that, but that doesn't exist. The media have owners, and they are acting in the interest of their owners. And many a journalist who lived under the illusion that they were free paid a price for it, were fired, or worse. But when it comes to the media industry, the mainstream media, the very big media, they're not free at all. They are absolutely not free to explore certain subjects and to challenge the narrative, challenge the party line, as they said in the good old days of the Soviet Union. And I can assure you that the propaganda that is being propagated by the mainstream media has really nothing to envy to what was being done by the Pravda in the old times of the Soviet Union. It's not less intense in terms of propaganda. It's a bit more subtle. I'll grant you that. It's more sophisticated. It is not less outrageous. So when it comes to climate change, and more specifically to global warming, there isn't a scientific consensus at all. And it's not a few dissident voices It's a lot. It's an awful lot of dissident voices of scientists who don't believe in the official version and who challenge it very, very strongly and very seriously, and with very serious scientific arguments. Don't believe either that there is something like free science. There is no more free science than there is a free press. Science is a very, very strongly guarded paradigm nowadays. There are very few independent scientists left because most scientists need to earn a living, simply said. So they can easily be put under pressure, and their budgets can be cut, and their career can be put in jeopardy if they want to stray from the party line. So I'm going to quote a very official mainstream science source, nevertheless, which is NASA. According to very official information coming from the NASA agency, I think you guys, I'm sorry, but I'm not sure, I don't remember anymore whether you say NASA or NASA. So I'll just go with NASA, you know. All planets of the solar system have gone through warming in this period. So it's not just the Earth that's heating up, that's been heating up. It's been all planets of the solar system. Why is that? Well, for a very obvious reason, which is that the activity of the sun has been more intense. So the sun is shining more brightly. What happens? The planets of the solar system heat up. Big surprise. And it's been measured in a very standard way. So it's been measured that temperatures have been rising on Venus, on Jupiter, on Saturn, on Mercury. And correct me if I'm wrong, but last time I checked, there were no fossil fuel factories on Venus, not that I'm aware of. So it's true that the temperatures are rising. At least that was true for a period of time. I'm not even sure that it's still the case right now, because that is heavily disputed, but it's been true. It's been true for a period of time due to the increased activity of the sun and certain cosmic phenomena like cosmic rays. So why that whole effort to convince you that human activity is the source? I recorded a video a few days ago that was called Godzilla and the ongoing anti-human propaganda effort. Well, to a certain extent, you can put that under the hood of that anti-human propaganda. Whatever challenging situation or difficult situation occurs, it must be humans' fault. And it's a way to play on the guilt factor. The more guilty you feel, the more easy it's going to be to control you. That's one of the aspects of that ongoing effort. If you feel guilty, if you feel unworthy, you'll be more willing to submit to authority in an attempt to redeem yourself. So that's one aspect of it. I have explored your aspect in more in depth in that video, so you can listen to it if you feel like it. But another very important aspect of that propaganda effort, that specific one regarding global warming, was to speed up the establishment of a global government structure. So it's again, it plays on psychology. You know, there is a global threat that individual governments or nation states can't address on their own. And we could dispute the necessity to have governments at all, and wonder whether communities would not be more efficient in tackling social issues and regulating societies than states are. But that's not the purpose of this specific video. So let's go back to the underlying agenda of establishing a global government structure funded by global taxes, carbon taxes in this case. Emissions of carbon have to be taxed. That's the idea, which is totally ludicrous, because first, carbon is not the source of global warming. The whole model, theoretical model of the greenhouse effect is flawed. Carbon is not the source of global warming, it's an effect of global warming, because the rising temperatures are heating up the oceans, and thus, of course, the water evaporating generates what? CO2, water vapor, carbon gas. So CO2, carbon dioxide, forms a minuscule, really minuscule percentage of the global Earth atmosphere. It's laughable. But CO2 is extremely important. Some call it the gas of life, because without the presence of CO2, organic life cannot develop in a planetary environment such as this one. It's of paramount importance. So the idea that we should strive to decrease the presence of CO2 in our atmosphere by any means is just completely contrary to the truth. And by the way, this whole obsessive focus on CO2 is totally removing the focus from what should really concern us in terms of all the pollutants that are present in our atmosphere, all the toxic chemicals that are saturating our cities. There is very little concern about that, because it's all about CO2, CO2, CO2. We have to reduce CO2. And you're going to get taxated much more heavily if your car is emitting too much CO2, too much in reference to these totally arbitrary standards. And there is much more focus being put on that than on all the noxious, poisonous emissions of your car. So, by the way you're breathing out CO2, constantly. Every time you are breathing out, you are emitting this evil global warming gas of CO2. So at the end of the day, don't breathe too much because they might taxate you for that. So this whole thing, once again, like many other things that are constantly hammered onto us, is pure deception. It's baloney, and it really doesn't resist analysis, and there is no consensus whatsoever on that subject. Now, the fact is, many people don't care at all about global warming. Despite the constant bombardment, the constant hammering of these holy truths upon the unaware masses, the holy global warming truth, because that's what it is. It's pure dogma. It is pure scientific, in fact unscientific dogma, and you're supposed to believe it. You're supposed to adhere blindly. It's the creed. It's nowadays creed, one of the creeds. So many people don't care, in fact. Maybe the majority of people don't care, because it's evident with opinion polls. You know, when you ask people what they are more concerned about, it's not global warming. Most people are concerned about very down-to-earth issues, not atmospheric ones. And to a certain extent, that is due to people's unwillingness or inability to see the bigger picture. I get that. But also, this is an issue for the social engineers, for the global controllers, because people are not motivated enough by the issue of climate change / global warming / fossil fuels emissions. People are not motivated enough, so there is not enough of a drive to justify that global governance scheme. And if you really want to curb down the emissions of CO2, you'll have to regulate all aspects of human activity, which is the purpose. It's to give them a pretext to hyper-regulate all aspects of human activity, which is already well underway, if you haven't noticed. So the issue is, people aren't taking and swallowing the bait enough. So what can you do to make people really concerned? Well, what you can do is engineer extreme weather circumstances, extreme weather conditions, extremely spectacular ones, extremely destructive ones. That's going to get people's attention. And then you're going to push the narrative that all these extreme weather conditions are due to global warming, climate change, fossil fuel emissions. You get the picture. Now, you might ask, how the heck would they do that? Well, the technologies are there. They've been there for quite a while. There is a global infrastructure of weather manipulation. Actually, we can call that weather warfare that is being used. It's available, it's sophisticated, and it's being used. So the chemtrails are part of that, but they have multiple purposes. So if you've never heard of chemtrails, they are the trails, these long trails of fumes that certain airplanes are leaving in the atmosphere. So normal airplanes have what is called contrails, condensation trails, and these ones they don't stick, they evaporate very quickly. But the chemtrails, which are these massive amounts of chemicals that are sprayed into the atmosphere by airplanes that are not regular passenger or cargo airplanes. They're mostly military airplanes. These they stay, and you can see them spread. And you can also see that these airplanes are forming grid patterns into the skies. They are tracing parallel lines and other lines that are perpendicular. So it forms a grid. And from that grid it spreads to fill the entire sky. And then it falls, it gradually falls to the ground. So you are breathing these things, and there are lots of barium and aluminum particles in that, and nanotechnology as well, all kinds of unpleasant stuff. But it's part of the weather control infrastructure. You also have the HARP, the so-called HARP infrastructure, which was a project of the US military, High Auroral something research program. One of the first books to draw people's attention on that subject was called, very appropriately, was titled Angels Don't Play That Harp. I bet they don't. HARP has multiple purposes, and one of these multiple purposes is weather manipulation. So HARP and chemtrails are part of that. There are other tools that are also used in order to engineer these effects, these extreme weather phenomena. So the situation we have right now is that we have persistent droughts, and in a situation of persistent drought, of course, it's easier to generate a fire. And there are several ways to generate a fire. The traditional method is to put arsonists to the job. And these people are just not random vandals that put on a fire for the pleasure of the pervert infantile pleasure of seeing a forest burn. Now, that's actually very unusual. What is more common is people who are paid to do it, for instance, by real estate developers who want to claim some land in order to build stuff on that land. But what is even more common is people without much conscience, of course, who are paid in order to start these fires, in order to illustrate the global warming theme, the global warming, in order to justify the global warming meme. So there's that. There's the paid people with sometimes with flamethrowers, actually, military-grade flamethrowers. But nowadays there are also much more exotic weaponry, like satellite-based lasers that are used to start and intensify these fires. And that's not science fiction at all. We are there. Remember in the 80s, President Reagan IDS. IDS was an acronym for strategic defense. It maybe in the US it was SDI. What I remember is Strategic Defense Initiative. But the idea was to create a global network of satellites that could blow missiles up, missiles that would target the US by sending by beaming rays, in fact, and that was talked about in the 80s, so over 30 years ago. And I can assure you that in 30 years, technology that was already much more advanced at that time than we were told has evolved a lot. And that beaming laser rays from satellites is child's play for people who have these technologies available and who have the means and the will to use them. So the current extremely bizarre, extremely violent wildfires that we are witnessing have precious little to do with nature and a lot to do with meteorological terrorism, weather terrorism. So what can we do about it? What can we do about it? Because if you want to make people aware of that, it's going to be really difficult, because they're going to ask you, where is the proof? And if you've done a lot of research, you can reference them to books and articles and whatnot and interviews, but that's going to take a lot of time. And even then, there's going to be a lot of denial. There is going to be cognitive dissonance, people who don't want to hear about all these things because it's too scary, because it's challenging their vision of the world too much, and they don't want to deal with that, they don't want to cope with that. And also, even if they accept it as truth, what are they going to do about it? Are they going to call their parliament representative about it? Are they going to organize demonstrations on the streets? What are they going to do? Are they going to try and storm military bases where weaponry is supposedly present? What can they do? Well, that's where this video is going to be hopefully useful to all those who watch it. I have experience in that area, very successful experience, in fact. I have seen multiple times that I was able to influence weather in a major way, and the first time I saw that was, I believe it was in 2002, if I remember correctly. I was in Mexico. I was visiting the Mayan sites in Mexico, and I was in Chichen Itza, in the Chichen Itza temple complex. And there was at the time a prolonged drought in Mexico. It hadn't rained in a month. And I saw a very large stone, something like an altar or something similar, but that big piece of carved stone was dedicated to the god Shak, who was the ancient Mayan god of rain. And so I thought, all right then, why not give it a try? And with all the might of my intention, I actually invoked that deity, the god Shak, and I formulated that intention that that being would lend its assistance so that it would start to to rain. Well, what do you know? A few hours later, clouds started to form and gather together in that sky that was of a totally pristine, unadulterated blue a few hours before. And before you know it, there was thunder and lightning, and rain started to pour. I mean, really pour. And it wasn't a one shot. It continued that way every day. Every day after I made that very successful attempt. To the point that the manager of the hotel at which I was staying was actually pretty surprised. He was telling me, well, you know, it's not usual to have rain every day like that. So I must remind you that it had been a very prolonged drought that had lasted for months. And it had only taken a few minutes to break that static pattern and to put movement into the atmospheric conditions again and to re-establish balance. There it is for you, the power, the extraordinary power of a strong, clear human intention. And I probably had help in that specific situation, meaning that this stone over the centuries had been charged by a lot of focused devotional energy from all these people who were praying the god Shag for rain. So I was most certainly able to trigger the powerful thought form that was stored or linked with that stone. And maybe there was still an actual entity responding to the name Shag and still linked with that stone that was in a position to provide some help. But later on, I had the opportunity to perform that kind of feat again without invoking any kind of deity at all, just by connecting with the earth and formulating an intention that balance would come back to the climate. For instance, about 3 years ago I was in the UK and there were very strong winds, and it had also been lasting for several weeks, and at some point I realized that there was something wrong. These winds didn't feel right. There was something that didn't feel natural about them and about the continual nature of the phenomenon. And so with my partner at the time, we did a meditation, and the winds subsided the day after we did that meditation, and they came to a halt. It completely stopped, and not just in the UK but in most of Northern Europe that had also been subject to these very strong winds. So these are two examples, and I could give you other examples, but I believe these ones are significant enough. So the conclusion of that explanation is that whether you believe or not that the extreme weather patterns that we are observing right now, the droughts, the wildfires, the torrential rains, whether you believe they're natural or not, the fact is we can do something about it. We can help the people who suffer under these conditions. We can help the animal and plant life who suffer under these conditions. We can help bring balance back, and it's not difficult. And the more of us do it, the more of an effect it's going to have, the stronger it will be, the more durable it will be, and the more it will counteract any kind of weaponry that might be put to use against weather balance, against us, actually. All right, this is enough for the context and introduction. It's been pretty long, as usual. I'm quite the talker. You'll be more and more aware of that if you if you keep following me and watching my videos. I'm a very big talker. So time now for giving you the tools that you can use. So during this meditation, I'll ask you to focus on a certain area of your body, which is actually here. So that is a center, and if you are into chakras, it is not a chakra. It is a much more primordial center than chakras are. It is really the core center of your embodiment, of your incarnation. It's through that center that your whole incarnated embodied being gets manifested. So the way to spot it, you might say that it's between the throat and the heart. You can also say that it is the crossing point, the nexus between the the vertical axis of your body that runs from the top of your head through your feet to your perineum, and then to the spot in between your 2 feet. So that's the vertical axis of your body. And if you stretch your 2 arms out, you have your horizontal axis. So for most people, the crossing point is going to be here. So that's where the core of this major center is located. So this center really connects you with everything. It connects you with all aspects of your multidimensional being, and it connects you with all of life. So we are going to use it in that meditation. All right. So without further ado, let's take a comfortable position. And I won't use any particular music because I want to put this at your disposal as quickly as possible. I just got inspired yesterday by reports of what's happening in California, and I might have responded more quickly, but I'm not used to following the news. So most of the time it is serving me very well, but sometimes I can miss certain things due to that. All right, so again, please take a comfortable position, and with your spine straight, your legs and arms uncrossed, your feet flat on the floor, your hands uncrossed. You can start to breathe deeply, to breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. And with each out breath, imagine and intend that you breathe all tensions out of your body. Breathe stress and tension out through the mouth. And breathe peace and relaxation in. And as you keep breathing in and out, you can start to focus on that area that I showed you, that nexus of your body, where the thymus gland, where the thymus is located under your sternum. Focus on that area. Keep breathing slowly, deeply, and comfortably. And let yourself recede into your own being. Let that center awaken. Let it be activated. Let it open. Let it pulsate. Let it connect you to all aspects of your being, to all that you are. And to all of life. Let it remind you at a subtle level that you are not only your incarnated self, but that you also are your greater being that most people call your higher self. And that beyond that greater being, you have a cosmic self of universal proportions. And that even beyond your cosmic self, you have an infinite self. But for now, we want to focus on this beautiful planet Earth. You are a being of vast and even infinite proportions. And your incarnated ego self is connected to that immensity, to all that power, all these resources, all that knowledge. And you are bringing all this power into focus through that amazing physical body, that amazing physical vehicle of yours. Know and feel that you are in touch with all life on this planet, with all of the ecosystems of the earth. You are connected to the weather patterns. You are connected to the atmosphere and all of its dynamics. You are connected to the beings in the more subtle frequencies of life beyond the physical that are working to regulate the weather patterns. And we are now going to lend them a helpful hand. Feel your connection, your deep, intimate connection with your mother planet, with this amazing being, this amazing, sentient, loving Mother Earth. Feel how your core, your essential heart, is connected with her core, her essential heart. Let your heart resonate with her heart. Know that an aspect of your being is always present in the heart of your mother planet. Feel your connection with that aspect as well. Remember your covenant with the earth. Remember the old alliance with the earth, the commitment of mutual support. She supported you, and she still does every step of the way. And now we remember how to support her. It is time. It is time. And so, as these vast beings of infinite grandeur, as these stewards and guardians and partners of Mother Earth, in full cooperation with her consciousness, and with the beings who help in regulating the weather patterns. We are now, from the core of our being, with all that we are formulating an intention for balance to come back in the weather, in meteorological conditions and patterns worldwide, worldwide, worldwide. And if you are in an area where the weather is going through disturbance, or if you are sensitive to the situation of an area where there is strong disturbance at the moment, you can have a specific intention for that area as well. Our intention, in full partnership with the earth, in respect of her needs, in connection with all that we are, reigns supreme. No tools, no technology, no infrastructure can interfere with that power. It is superseding everything. And let that flow of cohesion, of integrity, of love and wisdom also establish balance within ourselves, so that the balance within ourselves can be reflected in our outer environment as balance in the weather. I'm going to be silent for a moment now, so that we can immerse ourselves in that communion, in the purity of that intention, and see it unfold through us into the world of manifestation. Be aware. Be aware that this intention that is unfolding through you transcends your egoic desires and your ideas about what should happen, about what should be done. There are situations in which people need to experience hardship. That is what their being wants for them in order to learn certain lessons, in order to grow in wisdom. Sometimes extreme weather patterns are also a way to discharge large pools of emotional imbalance, of distorted thought forms. That is a necessity. So what we are doing here isn't meant to prevent what needs to be experienced. But the purity of your intention, expressed through your essential heart, in full cooperation with the earth and her knowledge and her wisdom, will only act to bring balance where it is needed, where it is appropriate, and in the ways that are appropriate and aligned. Know this. Trust this. You can gently bring your awareness back to your physical body. You can start by feel the contact of your legs and your back with the seat on which you rest. Feel the movement of the air in your lungs again. Think of the room around you. Think of the lighting, of the colors, of the objects around you. Start to wiggle your fingers. And then move any part of your body you feel like moving. And when you feel that you are ready, open your eyes. I thank all of you who will use that tool, who will participate to that meditation. And I encourage you to share it with as many people as possible whenever you feel that it's appropriate, that they might be receptive and that they might be open to this approach. I also encourage you to gather with other people, even if it's only one other person to do this together. It's going to magnify the effects. And in that spirit also, what you can do whenever you do it is have an intention to connect to all of the people all over the world who are using it, or have used it, or are going to use it. You can transcend the limitations of linear time in that way, just as you transcend the limitations of space when you do that meditation from your living room or bedroom or wherever you might be. So thank you very much, everyone, and I wish you all the best in the discovery of that way of supporting the earth and be her faithful, devoted partner. See you soon. Bye-bye.